So,
I'm good. Yep.
Let's see if you can name the player. This player had a total of 24 seasons at the professional level. He amassed 160 home runs, 198 stolen bases, 1,114 runs batted in, 135 triples, a career batting average of 303, and had over 4,200 hits over the course of his career. He won the Rookie of the Year of the National League, became the most valuable player of the National League, and made the All-Star game 17 times. Any guesses? That man would be Pete Rose, one of the most exciting players to ever play the game. Even with the statistics and honors amassed over his 24 years, Pete Rose is still not in the Baseball Hall of Fame. After being found guilty for betting on his own games as a manager from 1984 to 1987, Rose was officially banned from Major League Baseball in 1991. As bad as the charges may sound, the evidence shows that Pete Rose never bet against his team whilst managing them and never used the team's money to place those bets. With all context taken into account, Pete Rose should be in the Major League Baseball Hall of Fame and should be unbanned from the league as a whole. Since I am a huge baseball fan who has studied the ways that Pete Rose not only played but played the game, I feel qualified to speak on behalf of his impressive career and make the case for him to be a part of the Hall of Fame. Pete Rose is a legendary player with an impressive stat line. He never affected the game in the ways people believe. Players have committed far more egregious offenses to the game are in the Hall of Fame and in Cooperstown, and Rose absolutely deserves to be a part of that rich history. Now that I've given you a brief glimpse into Pete Rose, I'm going to tell you about his statistical career. Pete Rose is arguably the most notable player in the Cincinnati Reds franchise. His stat line is far better than most remember. Pete Rose may not have been a super slugger, but he had one pivotal thing that made him a legend in Cincinnati: speed. Over the course of his career, Rose amassed nearly 200 stolen bases while recording a staggering 135 triples. He played with an intensity not seen in baseball and would work harder than any player in his time. Due to his intensity and speed, Rose was formerly nicknamed Charlie Hustle. Rose wasn't only a great base runner, he was a feared batter. In 1984, Rose would score his 4,000th career hit, a remarkable statistic to remember. In addition, he would draw a staggering 1,566 walks in 24 years. This shows how effective a hitter Rose was in his prime. Following his retirement from playing, Rose took a job as a full-time manager of the Reds in 1987. It should be noted that from 1984 to 1986, Rose would not only be the manager of the Reds, but played for the team as well, a rarity in baseball today. In 6 seasons as the Reds manager, Rose would amass over 400 career wins, whilst having a career managerial record of .525, which is a winning record. Although Rose and the Reds would not make the playoffs in this time, Rose would come very close, finishing second in the NL Central Division 5 consecutive seasons. In addition, Rose would finish second place out of 15 eligible managers in the NL Manager of the Year award. This is yet another accolade that Rose could add to his repertoire. Now that I have told you about Rose's career's statistics and accolades, I'm going to tell you about the highly publicized investigation into his gambling and the accusations made against him. In 1990, Major League Baseball would launch an investigation into Rose and the accusations that he was betting on baseball games, including the Reds games. Rose never once bet against the Reds in the 3 years he managed the team. According to the Dow report, which looked into the gambling in Major League Baseball, the report could not find a single instance where Rose bet against the team to win the ballgame. It must be noted that Rose did bet in favor of the Reds winning, which does not affect the Reds' performance. To bet in favor of your team only makes your team work harder, play harder throughout the game. Rose has also owned up to his actions and admitted his wrongdoing. In 2010, Rose gathered many of his teammates and players that he coached and said the following: "I disrespected the game of baseball. When you do that, you disrespect your teammates, the game, and your family. I got suspended 21 years ago. For 10 to 12 years, I kept it inside. That's changed. I'm I'm a different guy. I love the fans. I love the game of baseball. And I love Cincinnati baseball. Unlike many players who've disrespected the game of baseball, Rose admitted his wrongdoing and is working to mend the wounds that he put on America's pastime. Why would Major League Baseball kick a man when he's down, especially when he spent his life making the game of baseball better? Now that I've told you about the far-fetched accusations made against Rose, I'm going to tell you about some of the players that committed far more egregious offenses to the game of baseball and yet are enshrined in baseball's Hall of Fame. Even though Rose has been suspended for life from Major League Baseball, which means he can never be a part of the Hall of Fame, there have been many players that have done far worse than what he did. Here's one of baseball's most notable Hall of Famers who had a negative effect on the game. Gaylord Perry was a legendary pitcher who pitched for 22 years in the major leagues and used pitches outlawed by Major League Baseball in 1920, which was known as the spitball. The spitball entails applying lubricant secretly to the ball, increasing the velocity and spin rate, affecting the pitch immensely. Perry has denied that he ever used this pitch, and even would publish a book. Perry denied that he ever used this pitch, even though he would eventually publish a book talking about his tricks. Perry would be inducted into the Baseball Hall of Fame in 1991 with 2 Cy Youngs to his name. If that wasn't bad enough, Ty Cobb has an even worse reputation among baseball circles. Cobb, considered one of baseball's pioneers, had an awful reputation on and off the diamond for allegations of racism against blackball players to a murder investigation, amongst other things. Cobb certainly affected the game of baseball in a negative way. In terms of the incidents that occurred on the diamond, Cobb has strong ties to the infamous 1919 Black Sox cheating scheme, in which is baseball's biggest controversy ever. He would admit this to the commissioner of the league in 1920 as the investigation was occurring. Cobb is a part of the Hall of Fame. And was inducted in 1936. Did Pete Rose bet on his games? Yes. Did it affect the Reds winning those games? Does Rose deserve to be punished for his part in the gambling ring? Yes, absolutely. But is that punishment a lifetime suspension from the game he gave everything for? No. Rose had an amazing playing career and a respectable managing career. The allegations made against him were far-fetched and never truly affected the Reds in the ways many believe it did. With salacious headlines such as Sports Illustrated's in 1989 showing a private conversation between Tom Dowd and the shady former bookkeeper of Rose's, he was promised immunity, which was basically talking about the conversation between the two of them, and that was later debunked. Imagine having a playing career as record-breaking as Rose's was, making a terrible decision to forever tarnish your reputation, admitting to the mistake to clear the air, and still being banned from a place you deserve to be. Wouldn't that be devastating? That's how Rose feels, being shut out by the game which was his life. That needs to change.